Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is the invisible side to success, how to achieve more without the struggle. If you don't know me already, my name is Karen Hunter, and I'm so excited for you being here today. I'm here today on Zoom, and I'm here on Facebook Live. And I'm here at the same time today and tomorrow, like I've just said, but I've got so much to bring you, lots of value. I think you're going to gain so much from these 2 days to help you move forward. My aim is to get you thinking differently from now on. So thank you for coming here. I think you're going to get so much from these 2 evenings, because today is all about these 2 days are all about how to achieve more without the struggle. So I would just want to start off, how do we do that? Well, first we have to understand that if you've been pushing yourself, that can take up so much of your energy, and our energy crashes, doesn't it, if we push ourselves? We live in a world that says, if I'm not outputting something, if I'm not doing, then I'm not enough. Now, do you notice a part of yourself that's tired of all that? The thing is, you've been doing all this from an outdated model. And now it's time to release that and receive something so much better. New energy, new ideas, new excitement, something in you wants to give you what you want. But we have to release some old limitations from stopping us moving us forward. So I really want to get into this. So what do you really want in life, and how can you know what that is? So we've got to give ourselves permission to connect with who we are, away from the chatter and the noise of life, right? So let's look at that. I want to ask you, what makes your heart sing? What fires you up and gets you excited? And are you making the most of your inbuilt creativity, or is your creativity lying dormant, just waiting for you to access it? So I'm going to talk about how to get clarity on what you really want and how to get excited about that. So I'm also going to talk about, when you set a plan of action into motion and then that fizzles, and that's to do with something called the knowing doing gap. But what we want to ask is, why does that happen? Why is it we set ourselves a plan of action, we get fired up, but we lose motivation and we lose that drive that set us off forward? So I'm going to quickly go over who I am. So I'm a results success coach, and I'm the founder of Truth and Flow. I'm also a consultant for Bob Proctor. And if you're not familiar with Bob Proctor, he is the master thinker in America, and he is making a massive impact through the world right now, and has been for quite a long time, on helping people to create the life that they truly want, not what they need, not what makes them more content, but how to get what they want in their heart of hearts. And he's been doing this for 60 years, helping people, and with great success. There's hundreds and thousands of people waking up to their potential, and millions, catching on to a better way to live. And more people are realizing that the old ways of doing things, the struggle, the stress, those things aren't working for them. And they're starting to realize that their life is going quite fast and they're not achieving what they hoped they would. So I help people tap into their inner potential, and I help them close that knowing doing gap, so they gracefully go from where they are to where they want to be. I help people get to the root cause of their results instead of treating symptoms, because we're all treating symptoms, emotional, physical, and mental. And the root cause is actually in you. It's not in the job. It's not your spouse, your kids, or anything outside of you. It's not in the job. And it's not actually you, because you are perfect. But your mindset, your patterns, your inner conflicts are holding you back from the growth that's essentially yours. So this isn't a class on positive thinking. You can be positively thinking, but still have a negative mindset. This is about understanding what is holding you back from being more, having more, and most importantly, feeling good about who you are, so you can move freely and easily through your life. And you have every right to feel good about who you are. Now, I ask people, what do you really want in your life? And I found that most people don't want to be wealthy. Actually, they want three things. They want to not have any financial concerns. They want, if they want to travel, they don't want to worry about money. If they want a new car, they want to feel free enough to get the new car. They don't want any financial concerns. They want to wake up in the morning excited about how they're going to spend their day. They want to mix with people who are enthusiastic and, have a good attitude, upbeat. Yeah. So the first thing to do is to help you understand why it's important to have goals. So a goal is designed to help us grow. It's not to get, it's to help us have a meaningful direction in life. So if we go to the shopping centre, you don't want to walk around aimlessly around the shopping centre. We want to know where we're going. We want to know what we're buying. We want to know. And I've realised that many people don't set goals effectively. They're operating with a limited level of consciousness. They don't realise that their average everyday mindset is only expecting the same thing day in and day out. So they're thinking, if I could get the money, or if I could get the help or the advice, then I could do this. So maybe that's to get a new car, or start a business, or try something new. But the thing is, we're trading our life for what we want. We're investing a lot of time, we're investing a lot of energy in wanting and wishing for those things. So let me ask you this, would you trade your life for a car or a house? I don't think you would. What we want has to be really meaningful to us. We've got to get into our heart. But how do we do that when we're so caught up in our head in this everyday mental activity? You see, we're not taught to live this way. I meet people who, when they listen to their heart, they say, I was just walking around existing. I've been caught up in my head in the mundane every day, just accepting and not questioning, this status quo, that I've been living my life like this. And let me just admit somebody. So when we have to relax and not give any thought to where the money is going to come from or where the help is going to come from. We have to be curious of a new way to live. So the first thing to honor is, what do you really want? If you want to be waking up every day with excitement for your life and what you do, you're going to need to be inspired, by going after something that you really, really want. It's going to have to come from inside you. And I mean, something that really lights you up, something that you get excited about. And maybe, nothing lights you up right now, and that's okay. But I know that something does pull on you from time to time. And I know that there's something inside you that pops into your head every now and then, something that piques your interest, something you're drawn to. And I know that because we all have that inside of us. But are you giving yourself the permission to connect with that, to know that that is possible for you? We often think that other people just fall instantly in love with an idea that, but many people don't know at first. They might have to explore an interest, they tease it out or play around with the idea. And if they feel it in their heart, then they begin to fall in love with the idea. They didn't know how to do it, but it's their want that sets their heart on fire. Now, I've got some really good examples of some famous people in history who fell in love with what their heart wanted. And those ideas start to come to life. Now, Edmund Hillary, he was a beekeeper in Auckland, and he wanted to climb Mount Everest. And he'd never done it before. Great people died trying to do it. Well, he went in 1951 and he failed. He went back in 1952 and failed. And in 1953, he stood on the top of the mountain and he didn't know how he would get there until after he got there. But his want was in his heart, and that pushed him there. Another example is Edison. He didn't know how to illuminate the world with the incandescent light bulb until after he had done it. The Wright brothers were bicycle mechanics from Dayton, Ohio. No one believed it was possible to fly. They've been trying for years, but they wanted to do it. They didn't know how. And, they couldn't even tell you until after they'd done it. Now their first flight only lasted 12 seconds. And sure, the naysayers say, yeah, but they were only up there for 12 seconds. But they said we not only got the thing up there for 12 seconds, but we kept it up there for those 12 seconds. And these are just ordinary people with small ideas. But understand, when you fan a small idea, it can get big, and that idea starts to take on a momentum of its own. So when a person sets a goal, they've got to say, if I just let my mind wander, if I just use my imagination, how do I really want to live? So think about the areas of your life. What is it that you really would love to improve? If you could wave a magic wand, would you want to work as you do? Would you want to be in the job that you're in? Have the relationships that you have? Are those relationships ones that fulfill you? Is your business, is it how you want it? As a person, do you feel confident? Do you feel secure? Do you feel independent? Do you feel good about yourself and who you are? And when I talk about improvements that you want to make, which are essentially goals, and we start to think about what do you want? Well, sometimes you might feel stuck with that question, but be honest with yourself. And maybe you say, you have no clue to what you want, and that's okay. But deep down, somewhere in your day-to-day, if you give yourself permission to just relax and ponder, you're gonna know it's gonna be there somewhere deep down. And maybe you've decided that either you can't have it, or you don't think you're smart enough, or you don't think you're good enough, or you don't think you're even worthy enough. Well, I can tell you there is someone out there right now that is living the life that you want, and they started it and they chose to believe in themselves. If they can have it, you can definitely have it. I fully believe in you, and so should you. So why would I say that when, some of you I don't even know? Because I was that person. I didn't believe that much in myself. And I just want to ask yourself this. If you waved a magic wand, what does the ideal picture of your life look like? Another thing you can ask yourself, who do you find yourself envious of when you look at their life and you just think, oh my God, their life is amazing. I'd love to do what they do. How awesome is it that they do this or do that? You've got to get really honest, and you've got to push the bullshit aside and answer that question honestly. So start with answering that question. What do you really want? With a massive dose of honesty. And maybe for some of you, I can say it another way. What is it that you don't want? What is it that you don't want to continue in your life in 2021 for the next 4 or 5 months? Is it the pattern of how you earn and how you create money? Is it something to do with your health and your well-being? Is it something to do with a relationship in your life? Is it to end drama, or is there disharmony in your family life? Do you want to end the mundane and get some real zest and meaning and excitement back? And I mean passion for who you are and what you want to do to feel really good about yourself and who you are. I always wanted this deep conviction and gravitas and express that into the world. Is that something that you're looking for? So what is it that you want to stop repeating? Maybe for some of you, that's a feeling of frustration or boredom, or maybe for some of you, you worry a lot, you feel fearful a lot. If you ended shame and judgment, wouldn't you agree that your life would improve? It would improve massively. Shame and judgment stops us doing a lot of things. Maybe you have a habit or an addiction that you want to release. What have you put on hold for all this time, and what would you like more of? Here's another great question. What don't you want to take with you into 2022, into next year? So when you look at it from that side, it's really clear to see that there are things that you would prefer to have in your life. So we can use polarity in this way. You can start to ask, what do I not want to take with me into 2022? Then ask, so what do I really want in my life next year? So let's get clear about who we are, and what we want to, next year, because we're not getting any younger. And let me tell you, it's simple to get what you want. It's actually less complicated than you imagine. And it comes down to one habit. Now, if you form this habit and you do it every day, it'll change everything for you. And the more often, you form this habit, the better your life is going to get. You're going to earn the amount of money that you want, that you really want to earn. You get to feel the excitement and confidence that you've always wanted. You get to spend time with your family, to create the days and weeks the way that you want to. You get to enjoy relationships that are meaningful to you. And it comes down to this one habit. But let me warn you, I'm going to warn you that when I tell you about this habit, you'll be tempted to reject it because it's so simple. And it's the habit of making decisions. Now, you might think that you're a pretty good decision maker at the moment, but do you ever procrastinate? Do you ever feel a bit stuck in your life? Now, if you want to ignite that fire within you and into your life, it's time to start making new small decisions every day that are in alignment with what you want to create. So make decisions every day, not just once a week, not just once a month. This is about making decisions a habit, because if you don't, the old excuses are going to keep you where you are. And those excuses, they keep you stuck, and they are called paradigms, or you might know them as beliefs. So we've got to wake up every day and keep making the decision. So tell yourself, I will have this thing. I decide to have it. I will do this. And you must make and keep that decision every single day until you no longer have to, until it's a formed habit. So what are these excuses that are limiting you? Well, we have to talk about the power of our mind. Mind is an activity. It's not the brain as you might assume. So you have a conscious or a thinking mind and a subconscious mind or emotional mind. Okay. And you and I have beliefs about ourselves and the world. And from birth, we were told things, we experienced things, there were ideas flowing around, and those ideas and experiences have been impressed into our subconscious mind over the course of your life. And those ideas and those habits become fixed, and they form into something called a paradigm or a belief. Now, a negative paradigm could be someone who believes they aren't smart. Maybe they were told that as a child, but this could be a total lie. So when something is repeated over and over, it forms into a new belief. It doesn't matter if that belief is true or not. The key is that person will act according to their belief. So they may struggle or not try at school because they believe they aren't good enough, they aren't smart enough. And this is really sad because, they shift, because unless they shift that belief, it's going to hold them back. So for you to understand this, we are essentially a host to these beliefs. We take these ideas and experiences on as our own, but they can come from other people, especially when growing up. And we can give our lives for our beliefs. People do. People behave according to their beliefs. We know this. It's a mental prison, and we accept this as normal. Now, beliefs aren't all that bad, but I'm here today to for you to be aware of what's holding you back. And those are essentially, negative beliefs. So here's an example. Has anybody watched Joker with Joaquin Phoenix? I think I've got this right. But his character, the Joker, grew up abused by men in his mother's life. And she always told him as a boy that his purpose in life was to make people happy. And so we see him in his job as a street clown to get attention for this business, this company down the street. So because his mum tells him that he was put there to make people happy, he habitually believed that this was his purpose, although he hates it. So he trades his life and sanity for it, all for a belief. He was told a complete lie in a bid to get love and approval, to keep him safe. And so he acted on that belief. And I think it's such an interesting story. It's horrifying because of what he goes through, but it highlights the fact that we can put up with negative circumstances in a belief that we will get love in return or safety in return. So it's not what he was told, but because of the emotional trauma as a child, his emotional self copes by playing out the pattern of people pleasing. She says, you're here to make people happy. So for him to stay safe, he's unconsciously sabotaging himself in that lifestyle. And it's a huge blind spot that, people sometimes can't mentally understand because it's emotional, and that's in the subconscious. So I'm also going to give you an example of my own personal paradigm. It's a long time ago, I found out that in order for my relationships to change, I had to change on the inside. And that meant changing the way that I was seeing others and myself, which was through a lens of lack, of me not being enough. And I was conscious of this, not all of the time, but some of the time. I was insecure and I wasn't aware of it, but it would play out in different areas of my life. And that meant, I had to end the disempowering stories about myself, but I will be blaming others for my lack. And this is what happens. We don't take responsibility for owning our own stories. We tend to blame the world. So I had to let go of my old idea of who I was and who people should be for me. So what does it mean when we take responsibility for our old stories? So I'm going to tell you a reasonably sad story from my childhood and how that affected my whole life, but more importantly, how I changed that to bring a massive shift in my life. And maybe this will prompt you, prompt something, within you if it resonates. So when I was 4 years old, on my first day of school, I was playing with some flowers on the teacher's windowsill and they all fell off. The actual story isn't the point here. So because of that, I was, violently shouted at by the teacher. I was terrified and I was horrified. And I felt humiliated because this was in front of the whole class. And I was made to stand in the corner of the room for the rest of the day. Now, this is my first day at school, I was 4 years old. Now that had a massive emotional impact on me, but I wasn't aware that it had. So this impact stayed with me my whole life, unconsciously. I remember it because it was so emotional and scary. Anything that we remember as children usually stays with us because we're emotionally impacted. And because I had no emotional capacity to deal with it as a 4-year-old, we bury it. As children, we don't understand, we don't have that emotional capacity. So to deal with something, to soothe ourselves. And these emotions, they stay in our subconscious mind until we have that capacity to look at them, to go into them when we're adults, possibly. And I can honestly say that I went through my life in this low level fear of doing something wrong. So my life was very safe. I made logical choices. I disregarded any creativity that showed up because my actions had got me into trouble as a 4-year-old. And I saw other kids' actions, getting them into trouble. So fear would always rise to the top. Now, I'm not blaming that teacher, but when I look back at how that school, handled kids, it was by using fear and sometimes humiliation. So I went through childhood very timid of authority, not feeling like I was allowed to express. And that went into my career as a web, in web design. I struggled at first because the inner creativity was so dampened down by the fear of doing something wrong. And so I had this unconscious, repetitive story swirling around my life. I am wrong. Everything I do is wrong. Everything, whatever I try is wrong. So I wouldn't even bother in many cases. Now, when that kind of thinking is with you all your life, it's really difficult to live in freedom, to try new things, to feel connected to anything, and or even anyone. I didn't allow myself to be who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. And I think there's a really good parable that fits here about the caterpillar transforming. And it goes something like this, that it was so it became so painful for the caterpillar living in the cocoon that it had to push through it all to become the butterfly. And I really feel that parable is what I was going through. Life became unbearable, that I had to know what was going on, like what was happening. Why were my relationships painful? Why wasn't I happy in my career? Why was my money always slipping away from me? And that meant I needed to know something was going on unconsciously, because everything that was happening was with me in different areas. Because on the outside, I was a confident, self-assured woman, but inside, fear was stumping my growth. I was sabotaging myself with addictions. I was working too many hours. I got addicted to work, shopping, crappy jobs. I was smoking, I was partying, any pattern. So I didn't have to feel what was underneath. And I didn't have a true connection with myself. And I felt lost. And you might say, well, Karen, I think I know who I am. And yeah, you probably do. But you have habitual ways of thinking and behaving that you're probably not aware of. Now, in your day, every day, we are only aware of what we're doing 2 to 4% of the time, because the conscious mind, and this is the science part, the conscious mind is in control or aware of what's going on 2 to 4% of your day about. Whereas your subconscious mind is in control 94 to 96% of the time of your day. So all your thinking and feeling is automatic. It's habitual, and you don't have much of a choice. I had the same patterns repeating in my relationships and jobs until I decided to break the pattern. So just think about what's been repeating over and over in your life for maybe a long time. And are you even aware that you can change it? Are you aware it can improve? But when you start to study you and you work with your subconscious mind, you begin to see what's holding you back. You begin to see the patterns of self-sabotage, so you can change them. And then life gets really fun, and you begin to find out what you really want in life. What you love, what you want to do, who you want to be. Because the thing is, the paradigm controls your logic, and logic only gets you so far in life. Your paradigm is created from your inner child, and that doesn't have the emotional capacity. That paradigm has served you up to a point, and that's when you experience the stuckness. But it doesn't know how to do the new idea that you have. It's working with a limited consciousness. That paradigm or belief has been formed from the child you within. It works using the willpower of your conscious mind. I hope this is making sense. So staying in the paradigm won't bring you the growth that you want, but the true you, your creativity goes further. It brings success. It's authentic. It's your integrity. It's all parts of you working as a whole. The real you is the real you is the sunshine, and your old stories or paradigms, if you imagine it, are the clouds. When you shift the paradigm and you remove these clouds, you begin to work with your true power that's underneath. So studying me meant saying goodbye to that small me. It meant exploring who I really am. It meant working with my subconscious mind and shifting those negative beliefs. And listen to this. This is essential to understand. Any unconscious fears, worries, doubts block your creativity from coming through. That is taking up all your vital energy. That's why this work of shifting your limited beliefs is so important, because when you do release your old beliefs, your energy changes, your creativity comes to the surface. So you start to get good ideas, you start to feel clearer, happier, more secure, more yourself. You start to really feel good about who you are. You start to make better choices because, you're not making it from that small self, which is basically the child in you. You're making better decisions. You're going to find that the decisions that you make lead to better circumstances, because how can a child make decisions for you? But not only that, when you're in alignment, your new actions, create improved results. So I'm just going to share my screen to illustrate this. Just one moment, because it's nice to share. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. If you can't see it, you're just going to have to go with what I'm saying. So to illustrate what I've been saying, so when you have a new idea in your mind, why is it, it doesn't work out how you planned? Why does your momentum wane and you give up? Because you're out of alignment. So your thoughts, your feelings, your actions must align to get the results that you want. Your thoughts in your conscious mind, your feelings in your subconscious mind, which is, we know it's stronger than your conscious, than your ideas, and the actions in your body. The thing is, when you have a new thought in your conscious mind, I want to do this. And when you impress it and feel it in your subconscious to act on, it's met with resistance in your subconscious mind, because your paradigm lies in your subconscious. And that belief may not be in harmony with your new idea. So when you begin to take action on the new idea, you'll start to feel fear or worry or doubt, because they're not in harmony. It's a new idea, and your old belief system is trying to get along with each other. It's like oil and water, they don't mix, cat and dog. So there's no action taken. So you stay where you are, or you may start to procrastinate, or you may start to self-sabotage. You want the idea and to make it happen, but you don't feel it. When people say, oh, I'm not feeling it today, well, that's because they're taking on board their belief system story. Or you'll get frustrated action, just with your willpower. And that will, can make it really difficult to get success. It takes a lot of energy. It's not sustainable. And this is called the struggle. You're wanting to go forward, but your belief is stopping you. So you're in this tug of war, and you may eventually give up. And this is where you're on the fence in indecision. So you have to be in alignment with the idea. But how do we get into alignment? So we work with the subconscious to move you towards your goal, and you release the worry, the doubt, the fear, all the negative paradigms about who you are and what's going on. So we've got to shift that paradigm. It is the easiest and the most simplest way. So you can do anything you want, but as long as the paradigm is in control, all of your will, all your motivation, will only keep you going for so long. We have to keep working with the subconscious mind. Now, your will is in the conscious mind, and it's only in 2 to 4% in control. The subconscious, like I said, is stronger. It's 94 to 96%. So anything you try to do will be overthrown by the subconscious, which is your fixed fear, doubt, and worry. Because let's face it, it's stronger than your willpower. That's why a lot of people, give up after giving lots of energy to something. They run out of steam, they give up on their dream, but unknowingly the success lies in working with the subconscious mind. So if you ever committed to getting up earlier, going to the gym, or getting up early for a reason, but when your alarm goes off, you roll over and you snooze the alarm, or, the new diet, you're gonna do the new diet, but after a couple of weeks, you lose interest. So this is the subconscious mind's strength at work. It overpowers your willpower unless you start to work cleverly with the subconscious. So what happens when you start to release old paradigms? Well, before, if you had stories about yourself that you're not enough, so you attracted people and relationships into your life that supported that belief. So you say, see, I'm rubbish, I'm this, I'm that, or that person, treats you like crap, then they confirm your belief of yourself. The world is a mirror of what's inside us. So in order for you to grow, to release limitations, what's in your subconscious mind attracts, and then you see the stories about yourself, because the universe wants your growth. You'll attract the circumstances that will be painful to you unless you decide to get your growth, and growth means you releasing the old stories. You don't attract what you think about, you attract who you are. So when you clear the old aspects of yourself, new opportunities appear, new ideas can be heard over the old fear and acted upon, and the energy can start moving in you. So if your energy is stuck in a thought pattern, it means that you're stuck in life. But when you dissolve these limitations, you start to light up like a beacon. Your creativity comes to the surface, taking new action, getting new results. Now, the only way change can happen is when your consciousness shifts. Things start to fall into place. It's like you've been pushing up a rock on a mountain. But when you start to clear the old you, you're cruising down the other side. And this is such a relief to know. When I discovered this stuff, it was such a relief for me. You don't have to keep fixing your life anymore. You don't have to keep working so hard. So many people give up on their dreams because they're met with their own resistance inside. And that's what it is, really. It's not anything outside of us. It's something blocking us internally in our mind. Now, wouldn't you want to be free of all that? Your heart, your inner knowing, and your body speaks the truth. And that's where I want to get you to. I want you to get you to a place where your unconscious fear isn't clouding your intuition and your creativity. So you're making moves in life and attracting effortlessly. You were born with creative energy. That's who you are. If you're in fear, doubt, and worry most of your day, it's because you have old ideas. It's because you have old trauma. Let me just stop that share. I didn't realize I hadn't stopped. Where was I? You have trauma that needs to be released, and experiences are stuck, and that's the energy in your body, and it stays there. So it's really difficult to do anything new, and that's why we stick where we are. So those self-sabotage patterns habitually repeat themselves over and over. They say, I can't deal with these feelings now. So I go to overworking, I go to the bottle of wine, I go to over-exercising, I go to binging on Netflix, I go to depression, I go to blame this person, I stay here in the job I hate because this is safe for me and this is familiar. But it's not what you want. So we've got to know what's happening within us. You don't have to keep settling for that. It's time to stop leaking your power and start using it. It's time to begin to trust what your heart is telling you. I want to get you to a place where you are so sure of who you are and where you're going, that you feel certainty, safety, confidence, passion, harmony, love, peace, money, fun, happy relationships. The list is endless. This is what we at PGI, Procter Gallagher Institute, call the best attitude. When you think, feel, and take action that lights you up. Now, it's clear to see that when you start to change you on the inside, your outside life changes. You start making an impact on others, and people, situations, begin to appear in your life, and everything comes down to you. So how do you see yourself and the world around you? What is your attitude of other people in your life? What is your attitude of your growth? You are responsible for how you feel, and your attitude dictates your success in life. So changing these stories takes some practice, but to do that, we have to make a decision to change their beliefs. If you want to change the direction of your life, you have to work on the inside first. It is the easiest way. Now, most people don't make defining decisions. They make wishes. That's not a decision. They say, I wish it would happen. If only it would happen for me. When I get the money, when I get the time. That's not a decision. That's you wishing for something. A decision is where you commit to yourself, where you say, this is what I want. This is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to get it. So you have to know what you want to keep making that decision so you can move forward away from the past stories. So you become more. And the more you do this, it starts to become part of your subconscious mind, which is also universal intelligence. You align to new ideas, new perceptions, and your energy starts to change. And then you start to feel unstoppable. It starts to inspire new behavior in you. You start to take new action, and the energy changes to produce new results. Because don't forget, we're working with the natural law of cause and effect. This is physics. And that tells us for every reaction, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So you start to produce new results. New thinking, new feeling, new behavior, new action, new reaction. So the more you learn to follow this and go deeper with it and really understand that, the more powerful you are within yourself, you can have what you want because you become more confident. You start to receive insights and new ideas because those negative thoughts aren't there anymore. Aren't going to hold you back anymore. And you start to move in a direction. Things start to feel right when you align to your energy. And this is why you never want to stop studying you. You never stop wanting to get to know who you are, because the outside world is very noisy and it can hold us in our tracks and pay attention to it rather than to yourself. Because the more you study you, the more you believe in you, the more confident you have in your ability of yourself. So what's really in control of your results? What's preventing you from having what you want? What's holding you back from that? If you know what you want, why don't you have it? Now, I was talking earlier about procrastination and self-sabotage. You already know what better looks like. If you have goals, you know to do better, to get up earlier, to fix that house, to do that exercise, to contact that person, to not have that extra glass of wine, or, to pay more attention to someone in your life. But knowing makes no difference because our results come from the paradigm, which again is stronger than your thinking mind. So if you want to change the results, you've got to change what's going on in the subconscious, and that requires some help. Remember, abundance attracts abundance and lack attracts lack. So over this week, pay attention to what you're giving your energy to. What are your emotions doing? Get focused on what you really want, where you want to be, so you can create it. Feel what you want in your heart. Sit down and imagine it. And you may not believe that right now, and that's okay, but just play around with that idea. Remember, logic has got you so far. The paradigm controls your logic. I'm talking about your inner creativity that's been held back by your logic, by your beliefs. So we've got to start to learn to access it, because if you knew how to create what you want, you'd already be doing it, right? Now, if you're creating and taking action from the little you stories, the small you, the paradigms, they want approval, or they're avoiding fear. Now, if you're doing that, taking action from there, you aren't making effective decisions. So think about it. Would you ask a 5-year-old to make a decision for you, an important one? Well, those paradigms have a limited level of consciousness like a 5-year-old, okay? So an easier way to achieve is more simple than you think. You've just got to make some decisions about which way you're going to do it. Are you going to force things the way that you've been doing it? Or are you going to dissolve the paradigms and then step into what you want? Okay, so I'm coming to the end here for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really enjoyed being with you today. The replays are in the Facebook group if you want to watch it again. I know there's a lot to get your head around, but you are changing things just by being here. So stay in the study. Your awareness is growing. And I'll see you back here tomorrow to talk about how to make a shift in your results. So that's going to be a good one tomorrow. That's going to be around self-image, and it's going to be around ending fear, because we don't want that anymore. So I'll see you back here tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Have a good evening, and bye for now.